Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Kaga. So, what I have planned for today is a couple things. First off, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. This is the very first of the actual arpeggio ships that I will feature on the channel. And if you're paying attention to the name column off there in the upper left hand side of the screen, you will notice that this is not me playing. I will spoil it for you. This is Destroyer Tachibana, who joined us a few videos back in the Alba division that I featured a little ways back. I think it was like maybe a week or two ago. And today he's pulling out the good old Arpeggio Congo. And I'm not going to tantalize you. This isn't really like fantastic battleship play, but you know what? Sometimes you don't need those massive citadel penetrations. You don't need to have perfect everything to wind up ahead and actually have a good game in it. So the second thing I really want to open up with this video with is just a simple question, you know? And like many things that enter my mind, it always starts with a question. You see, and I'll premise this question, you'll see a lot of people use two words, sometimes very interchangeably, almost like they don't notice that there's some subtle differences or some circular logic going on with these words. And I'll premise this with this very simple question. What is the difference between tactics and strategy? I know, we just hit something a little bit on the edge of philosophical. Wow, that's a first for the channel. I know, right? So, I'm going to start this conversation about this, and we'll kind of use this to fill some time while we wait for the battle to pick up. Because you know how Warships battles are, it can take a little while to develop and turn into those great shooting fests that we all come to know and love. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to look at just some simple definitions that you could very quickly Google yourself. And we'll go ahead and look at what is a tactic. And I will quote, "A tactic is an action or strategy carefully planned to achieve a specific end." Wait a minute. An action or strategy. So what is a strategy? Again, quoting, "A plan of action or policy designed to achieve a major or overall aim." Now we're getting a little bit tricky here, right? Certainly you follow some train of logic, you might sit back and say, if I'm going to assume that if a word uses another word in its definition, that the word that is used in the definition must therefore be the more basic word to use. But, and now let's keep going on this train of thought for a little bit, and why this gets a little funky for people is if the strategy is the more basic element to it, why is the strategy definition the only one that lists major and minor in any respect, versus tactic doesn't necessarily mention that explicitly? And you might answer this question with a simple observation that, well, tactics are more overarching and strategy must be narrower, and we can go off that logic. Well, then no, not really. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to say this is because when you start looking at small units like you find in your typical wargaming product, or product from Gaijin, or Obsidian Entertainment's Armored Warfare, it doesn't really matter, any of these games, really and truly, is that you individually, you can have your own ways you go about the order of battle, right? You have your own plan. You have your own ideas on how to address the vehicles in question, the map in question, how things interact. You have your own plan. But newsflash, just look at the team list that you have on your team and realize that there are that many other plans going on. Likewise, there are that many counter plans going on the enemy team. Now we're getting into some really complicated stuff here. So, when we start looking at like the individual, right? And you start looking at all of these plans that are concurrently happening in a given game, you come to this realization that there is no overarching umbrella to any of it. And, for that reason, you can sit back and go, well, if I look at the definition for strategy, one of the things it has ticked off is an overall aim, which clearly that doesn't have. So, on that definition, I can pretty successfully argue that what we have, at least like in this case, looking at the World of Warships, your typical battle in that game, is you have, 12 tacticians floating around the battlefield on each side. So for a grand total of, there are 24 tacticians across the entire map. Things are getting a little interesting. And that makes me sit back and wonder, and it's one of those questions, is that, are we losing because of bad tactics or bad strategy, or many cases the lack thereof? And this draws us back to the original question. Well, what is the difference between tactics and strategy? I think we have a little bit more of an answer right now. That tactics is something that the individual applies in a given event. Well, not even just an individual, a small unit. You can consider a division or a platoon's contributions to a battle to be on the order of tactics rather than on the order of strategy. Although their tactics can be a little bit farther reaching than an individual's because, the multitude of options available to a 3-man division or platoon, depending on what game you're on, or perhaps even a squadron, has implications for what they can affect in the flow of the battle. But that in of itself doesn't mean that what we're looking at with those particular instances is, in fact, strategy. It is how 25% of the team has decided they want to approach battle, but at the same instance, it's not necessarily, and I will stress that, not necessarily the case that the rest of your team will agree that is what's going to happen, or that is what's important. And finishing that thought, because it lacks that overall picture in the equation, we just can't call it strategy. Yes, it's a very powerful set of tactics, but it's not necessarily strategy. That is, unless you've loaded up the queue and you have 2 divisions in there and you can dominate the majority of the strategy. But you know what? I've rarely seen that happen. It can, but let's not go there, shall we? And this brings up another important aspect of tactics versus strategy. The subject of situational awareness. Now, this is a very interesting thing because there are different levels of situational awareness. You can have good situational awareness of certain threats so long as you're paying attention to within 7 kilometers. And everything that happens in there is something that's on your mind. Now, there's another type of situational awareness. You're looking at the mini-map. Wait a minute. I think I expect too much of gamerkind. Oh boy. Yeah, no, don't count on that. Though you can be that one person in a match that actually does pay attention to it. But there's still yet another layer of awareness that you could pursue if you so chose. And it's not just to keep track of what's happening on the mini-map, but the overall flow of the battle. And while it certainly isn't the plan that you're looking at when you are generally talking about strategy, it in of itself forms a much broader strategic situational awareness that, I think a lot of people could really benefit from. But, you can be the judge on that one, because your mileage may vary with it. And here's an idea. I'm going to put a link to a poll in the comment section of this video. And basically what I'm thinking about doing is starting up a new video series. It's weekly. I'm not certain the exact format just yet. There's going to be a few more questions that need to be answered. But the broad sense of what this video series will be, and subsequently the choices on the poll, is I'm kind of pondering going through this idea of tactics and strategy through some quite classic pieces of military literature as seems appropriate for gamers, in particular for gamers that are interested in the wargaming type products, War Thunder, Armored Warfare, those products, those games, and just kind of go through them and interpret them for their importance, more or less passage by passage, because the ones I'm thinking about are quite poetic. At least in their original languages, they're quite poetic, so they're closer to like small passages at a time that thinking about dedicating entire videos to. So please go ahead, check out the that poll and see which options interest you. And if you don't see a particular work that is of interest to you, please go ahead and leave a comment in the comments box down below the video, or in the comment section, however you want it to be called, and let me know. It might not make this particular video series, but never know. If it's liked enough, I could certainly look at making a second series after I conclude the first one. Good stuff. Well, I suppose that's enough me blathering on about esoteric definitions and some of the more alchemic stuff that is related to the English language and some of the words in common use. And let's get back to the game. So, recapping thus far, what we've seen from Tachibana-san has been, a mixture of pretty average plays in your battleships, coupled with some interesting RNG that has sent shots straddling around the target. To recap what straddling is, that's when you have shots landing on either side of an enemy vessel when you're firing at them. And basically you have that quintessential match that you have most of the time in pretty much every class except destroyers, where you can literally it doesn't feel like the match is particularly outstanding until you look at the net results, you know? And right here is the point where I'm just sitting there going, well, rather not right here per se, but this protracted engagement over the last few minutes has had my mind going a little bit on the stump side here, you know? Part of it comes down to ammunition choice here. I'm definitely in the camp that if I'm in a battleship, I do try to primarily fire armor piercing. That even includes carriers because I know that you want to keep them on fire to keep the deck out of commission, but at the same time, armor piercing will shred them like butter. And that's because your average aircraft carrier currently in World of Warships is built off of either cruiser type hulls or battle cruiser type hulls, which means they're not particularly well armored. They can still bounce a shot or two if they're at extreme angles, like you just saw this, it's either a New York or a Wyoming, bounce off of Tachibana's ARP Congo's hull right there. Open, there we go. Oh, armor piercing detected. Oh boy. He's coming for you. He's coming for you. Ow! Wow, high caliber. You know, admittedly, when I first watched this replay, I was sitting there going, did I get the wrong replay? Because I was sitting there looking at the summary screen from the WoW's replay site that this got uploaded to and forwarded to me. And it just left me with this, like, impression. I was going to see, like, mighty citadel penetrations and all kinds of goodness like that, but it just never came, you know? But the high caliber is evidence enough that it was a good match. Well, thank you for having bared with me as I slowly rambled on through most of this match on a little bit of a word journey or a philosophical adventure of sorts. I hope that it was interesting to you. If it was, or you just happened to like the video for whatever reason, please consider giving it a like down below. And I'd be ecstatic to read your thoughts on the topics raised during this video. And I hope that you take the time to answer the poll that I am going to have available via a link in the description box for this video. So please check that out. If you're new to the channel, please consider sticking around by hitting the old subscribe button down below. I hope to see you around the channel. Upcoming content, we're going to finish this week off with one hell of a Warships replay for you. So please look forward to that. We're going to pick up next week, starting Monday, regular programming as you would come to expect. So, once again, I'd like to thank you for having bared with me and bid you good day.